one of my favorite pursuits, which is second screening. How many of you spend, by the way, your evenings with the tablet on the couch or in a chair watching TV? How many of us are actually doing that behavior now? As we set up the panel, I want to remind everyone that we have a cocktail party right after this panel. Not to rush them, but we have a cocktail party right out here sponsored by Web Trends. Please join us. You know, what I was starting to think, I was playing all weekend. If you read to the column that just dropped today for Mobile Insider is in fact about the issue of second screening, specifically about AirPlay and the latest feature set that Apple introduced last week with iOS 5 and the iPad 2 and the 4S. But as I was thinking about second screening over the weekend and playing with it, it dawned on me that in many ways broadcasters and advertisers are to some degree are moving quickly into the same position that we've been talking about with retailers for the last year, and that is the ability that mobile represents for them both this tremendous promise of engaging their consumers on multiple dimensions, getting them onto a second screen or engaging them in another platform more deeply while they're in a primary venue. Retail is one place, but the other place is watching the TV screen. And then, of course, there's this tremendous possibility of them getting poached, being distracted. I've reported on 2 pieces of research recently that show 2 different phenomena happening at once. An ethnographic study out of the UK that showed that mobile and tablet media users were being seriously deflected from TV and by their attention to TV, and especially during ad pods when they were leaving the TV and focusing mainly on mobile. And then, of course, we've heard here today reference to some other studies that show how many people are using their mobile devices to look up ad content. So we're seeing both possibilities happen at once, and in many ways it replicates some of the peril and the promise that we're seeing at retail, but now happening in the living room. To take the lead on how various pieces of the value chain in second screening are trying to leverage this second screen vis-a-vis the first screen, both in marketing and also in media. To take the lead, I've asked Danielle Bulger, who is the Director of Technology and Entertainment from Compete. Danielle manages the wireless business at Compete. She helps carriers especially understand their audience's behaviors online and offline. She also spearheads the quarterly must-read smartphone intelligence report from Compete, which explores how consumers are using their devices, especially also how they're using their devices vis-a-vis TV. Please welcome Danielle.
So Corey thought it was difficult to go before lunch. We're going before cocktail hour. So 45 minutes until you guys get your first drink, but we've got a great group of panelists up here, so really pay attention. They've got some good stuff, good insights to share with you. But to start with a quick poll. So think about your households. How many of these, we're talking about second screen, but really it's third screen, fourth screen, fifth screens. How many screens does everybody have in their households? Do you have 5? Raise your hand if you have 5. 6? 7? I have 8. Anybody with 10 screens in their household? I'm coming to your house for Thanksgiving. So that's really why we're having this conversation today. All of these screens that we have at our access now are changing the way that we're interacting with the TV, with the tablet, with the mobile device. In many cases, it's augmenting the experience, and sometimes it's enhancing the experience. And a lot of times you're simply multitasking and not focusing 100% on either. So I'm going to ask each of these guys to introduce themselves, your name, where you work for. Do this quick, and then we can get into the meat of the discussion. First beer's on me for who goes the fastest.
Starting that end or mine?
Starting with you.
Okay, fast. So I'm Adam Kane. I'm into now. We started a company that focused really on this idea of what was happening around these devices. So a lot of people call us kind of a Shazam for TV. We work with live television. You can identify what you're watching. We were acquired by Yahoo about 12 weeks after we launched, really because the biggest insight around what's happening is how people are interacting with their devices in a completely new manner and the context with which they're watching TV. Is that good?
Great.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Rob Gellick. I've been overseeing the mobile business for CBS Interactive for the past 3 years. focused specifically on all of the CBS vertical brands, sports, news, entertainment, as well as about a dozen internet-native brands that we own and manage, TV.com, GameSpot, CNET, and others. We do mobile applications, mobile-optimized sites, many second-screen experiences around our specific shows or our sports franchises. And second screens have become part of the daily activity and discussion for us, how people manage everything from a pause and resume experience to a synced experience where you have some real-time data or information happening on a tablet or a smartphone while you're watching the broadcast.
I'm Alex Iskold. I'm founder and CEO of GetGlue. We're a New York-based social network for entertainment. We're focusing on enabling people to check in and share what they're watching on TV. We're nearing about 2 million users and just been watching the whole space unfold and building it up. We think that second screen lends itself onto amazing opportunities, both connecting people around their favorite shows and I think new advertising as well.
I'm Brendan Lucas. I run mobile for Black Entertainment Television. We've got an app called 106 & Park, which is the live interactive companion to our daily music countdown show. It's the BET equivalent of TRL, if any of you ever saw that on MTV. It's been live for about 10 years. The app and the app user actually become a part of the show. If you have the app open while you're watching the show, you can win things, you can become famous, and you can actually influence the outcome of the show. So I'll be talking about that today.
I'm Jason Tarantino. I am the Group Director of Insights and Planning for RGA San Francisco. RGA, I guess I'm the agency guy up here, the only one without an app. But we make apps, and we have a very large mobile and social group. We're a global company now of about 1,200 people, and we're very interested in these trends and how social and multi-screen viewing is actually affecting marketers.
So we'll start with a couple kind of layup questions here for you. Going down the line, how have you seen mobile devices revolutionize how people have watched TV, like kind of in the context of your own business?
So, I mean, I'll take it at a super high level. There was a gal from Google who was showing some of the consumption slides. And what you see is the way that people are engaging with their devices at different day parts. And one of the things that we just found fascinating is in particular, the way that people are engaging around the evening, which is really your living room experience. And so very clearly, people are doing multiple things at once. And I think all of us, maybe 5, 6 years ago, would have been sitting here saying, well, is the internet going to cannibalize TV and people aren't going to watch as much? And the shocking part is people are watching more television. It's actually up 22 minutes a month. So they're doing it, but they're doing other things. And so what we're trying to do in a lot of these form factors and a lot of these devices is, great, so there's a living room social experience, and what's that personal experience to you, and how are you engaging with that device?
I mean, the best way I can illustrate it is just to talk about some of the things we've been doing. I mean, I think second screen experiences is a catchphrase that's popular now, but has been out, in mobile environment for some time now. So for instance, in the sports environment, we've been launching products into the market. CBS Sports, you can get on, download our tablet app, and go into what we call a game tracker. And that's probably one of the most intensive second screen experiences where you can watch, on football, pass-by-pass updates of who's done what, who's injured. You can flip through other games, track another game while you're watching a game. And we certainly see in the day parts that those behaviors blow up at the same time we're broadcasting. So there's a direct equivalent to versus just going in to catch up on scores the next day or see what happened is that the behaviors during the peak times that we're broadcasting are highly correlated.
I think we're seeing a lot of people wanting to talk about TV that they're consuming. So obviously they're doing other things with their mobile devices, but I think that they also enjoy socializing and kind of finding out what their friends and other fans are saying about the shows as the shows happen. So it varies from different types of shows. So for example, reality TV is more conducive to shouting, while dramas more conducive to discussion. But in general, we're seeing the trend of sort of the water cooler moving online, and I think a lot of people are enjoying discussing their shows.
So cable networks, they get paid in two different ways. They get affiliate fees from from the cable providers, and then we also get ad revenue. So what we're trying to do is to create a compelling reason for people to actually sit down and tune into the show, because ratings directly impact your revenues on a couple of different fronts. And then the other thing we wanted to do is, as was mentioned here, people are multitasking now. They're doing a lot of different things while they're watching TV, and we wanted to refocus that energy back on the show. And for our demographic, actually, tablets are not very broadly distributed. And a year and a half ago, when we set out to do an app, we knew that really cheap Android devices were coming, especially among the prepaid carriers, which have a heavy concentration of African American users. And we knew that that was going to come like a freight train and hit us. And we saw it as an opportunity to really do something engaging to recapture those viewers.
I think what's really interesting is what was mentioned a little bit earlier is this tension. There's really a tension right now between this second app viewing, which is driving social engagement with television, as well as pulling people away from the television experience at different points in time. I think that's really an interesting thing for marketers to look at today, to think about how can we get people back interested in television where we're spending a good portion of our marketing spend, and also contribute to the conversations that are happening around television that have been now fostered through social networks, how that water cooler conversation that you might have had the next day is actually happening that minute at that time. So I think that's really the thing that's probably the most interesting to me, at least.
So those of you that have apps, kind of a two-part question. What type of data are you seeing around usage and engagement with your apps, especially kind of during the shows? And then the second piece of that question is, how are networks using any of that data, or how do you perceive that they will use that data in the future to start making some decisions about what shows stay on the air, what time slots shows go in, those kind of decisions that they have to make?
And I'll just jump in. We don't release, obviously, a lot of the stats, but I can talk at a high level about the impact of this. I think some of the conversation, at least what Brandon was mentioning, around this engagement, and even from Jason's perspective about this interesting tension between the broadcast and the digital space. I mean, we certainly see the things that are working is where we're trying to continue the dialogue. And this may sound cliche, but someone watches a show, they have a half an hour engagement in it, and the reason to push them to digital, obviously, is so brand affinity, keeping the dialogue going. The triggering points that we would traditionally say, okay, we're going to cover the time that's when they're not watching. We're finding that it is really converging around the point where actually they are watching at that point. Some of the sync experience help is when that watching activity gets pushed out to a DVR or not in a regular schedule, where maybe you have some real-time element that you want someone to follow while they're watching, that happens on a time-shifted basis. And so for us, we're currently bridging the gap around a show-by-show basis. Reality, as mentioned on the panel, is really a huge space for us. It also happens to be a place that we have a lot of supplemental content. It's not typical that at the network someone's up while they're creating the show that gets done, an hour hits production before it goes on air, that they're also sitting there and producing a whole bunch of side comment for it. That's not a mechanism that exists widely in the entertainment space today, but there is a ton of other rich content that we as digital partners build. A game accessory, a forum for people to chat and have dialogue. Big Brother this summer, we had 5 live direct streams from the house. You could sign up to a service and stream real-time what's happening in the house. Those types of experiences end up complementing each other and are the things that we find certainly most popular when there's a connection between the two.
Yeah, we would never look just at mobile app
Looking forward.
performance to decide whether or not to cancel a show. Really the bigger issue is how many people are watching it. But one mandate of all parts of a digital business in a TV network are to drive viewership and ratings. So, like I said, that's one big reason why we did the app. And I'll just share some numbers with you. We've had about a little over 1 million downloads of the app since we launched it in March. The show itself has a viewership of between 450,000 and 800,000 people a day. And we'll have between 40,000 and 90,000 app users log into the app and use it during the course of a day. So we're up to like 10 to 15% right now. And we believe that we're beginning to deliver against that mandate of really getting people to sit down and watch the show. We feel like we're really onto something here that we want to help, figure out how we can roll out across more shows.
In terms of data, we've been kind of like focusing on, obviously we're getting a lot of check-ins, like on an average day we get about 500,000 check-ins, so we kind of get large volume of data, and we can figure out pretty much the sort of social buzz on GetGlue, the popularity index, how popular things. It's been fascinating to watch. So for example, recent premiere of Walking Dead was a huge hit in terms of ratings, and you could also see on GetGlue that it was incredibly popular. We had, I think, over 45,000 check-ins within the premiere hour, which was quite a lot for us. In general, we're focusing on publicizing the data that we're getting. So every Tuesday, you can see that we syndicate a chart of top 10 most checked-in shows on GetGlue. And we've also done a bunch of studies trying to understand how social buzz maps onto ratings. And I think it's a little early, but it seems like they're related. And Nielsen also has done some work in the area saying that there's a relationship between social buzz and the ratings. They kind of don't go as far as saying there is a causation, but I think that it looks pretty promising.
I mean, I think one of the things to think about as we look at some of this data is these shows exist in different genres, and it's very clear, at least from our data, that there are different types of spikes. So think about sports versus something like news. Think about reality versus a scripted drama. There are very different reasons why people are participating and joining in that conversation or getting engaged. So the data is also kind of follows the cadence of these shows and what they're actually doing. The other thing that I think is kind of interesting in how you look at this is all of us, or many of us, we're moving well beyond just the, hey, I'm here, I'm watching this, it's now what? And what's the contextually relevant information that a user wants to engage in? It could be discussion, could be discovery, it could be a lot of different things, but all of us are starting to lean into that, what is that experience that goes well beyond just, hey, I'm watching.
Great. So you guys mentioned a couple TV shows, Big Brother offering some live feeds into the house. As one example, Walking Dead. 106 Park, I'm guessing you guys are actively promoting the app during the show. What are some other shows that are doing a particularly effective job at really harnessing some of the simul-screen behavior? What are some examples you guys have seen?
I think there's a couple of really interesting examples out there that are trying to harness this, what is essentially a nascent behavior. And one that's interesting is the Sci-Fi Channel has a show called Haven, where they're actually tying in a narrative element into the social sphere to keep people engaged with the story as it's happening, as well as after the show has happened, and to keep them wanting to come back to get to that event of the program, which is so essential to people like Brandon here who really want people to watch the show as it's happening, because that's going to drive up CPMs as opposed to time shifting. I think Glee is also doing some interesting work around this in terms of the way in which they're having actors actually comment. And I love trash TV, as I'm sure someone in the audience will admit to. I think the Real Housewives series has done some interesting things around their reunions. And Bravo actually has done quite a number of interesting things, including on their follow-up show to their reality shows, about incorporating tweeting, incorporating social conversation right into the reunion special or into even the conversation they're having with their guests on the show. So I think those are some really good examples of different ways in which people are approaching this.
Howard Stern, Private Parts. What did you do with Twitter? That was good. I like that. That was funny.
I think there's some non-expected things that we're already finding connections to as well. We launched a 60 Minutes app, obviously has a huge audience and install base from a news popularity show, and you don't think about that being one of the big drivers for second screen experiences, but the reality is the way that the news programming is set up is that there's very much this build-up around the 60 Minutes archive, where it's not just about the segment, but they know that the nature of the reporters have been doing stories across the course of the year, the past 2 years. So you you can trail it. And so instead of just launching an app that had the latest segments in it, we launched something called 60 Minutes Overtime, which has literally the full archive of the fully produced segments, in addition to what are essentially stuff that didn't make an air but are edited at the quality of a segment that would be up. And so someone can easily go into the app, search for it. And so we know, we're not naive to say that people are distracted while they're watching the TV anyways. You know, they're checking their email or on Facebook or doing whatever. But in the case that they're looking for more information to what we're presenting, we want to make sure that they stay with us for that discovery phase. And so by opening this archive of all the past episodes, you go in and you can very easily trace all the segments as they unfold over the course of that story.
Anyone else? Going back to the actual apps that you have in the marketplace, you know, so it's great that you get the download. After speaking to all of you, I downloaded all the apps onto my phone in the past week. But what are you learning about the consumer that gets them to come back? Like what are the tools that you're including in the mobile app as you build these out for the consumers that engages them and has them return and re-engage with the app?
Well, I think that's kind of like the hardest thing to figure out, like what gets people excited. And I think it's not always the same thing, and it doesn't always last, which is the trickiest part. But from the way that we're kind of approaching this, we're kind of trying to figure out, well, if the user is willing to check in, what are we giving back to the user? And when you think about this, one way we think about our business is we're in business of generating smiles. So what's a smile? Well, you and your friend watching the same show, or another fan you don't know made a witty comment that you can resonate with, or GetGlue recommended you, a new show you didn't know about, and now you like it, you become a fan. Or the network is rewarding you with some sort of a reward. You unlocked something for being a fan, you being recognized as a fan, and then maybe all the way up to a big retailer is giving you a coupon for your check-in. So if you think about a spectrum of these things, we're kind of trying to focus, given a single check-in, how can we reward people?
I mean, for us, it starts with one pretty obvious area, and maybe it's different for other people who have different, but we're kind of big media. And so it starts with something I can't take credit for, but CBS is producing a lot of great content. The show itself and the full episode, or an awesome game, happens to be, Saturday and it's an SEC game on CBS. Like, you take that kernel of must watch and being able to put the people together around those. It starts with really people are looking to consume on those channels. Once they become like they've missed a game or they want to catch up on a show, they realize that once they come in to watch that episode, that if they are watching the broadcast as well, there's all this other supplemental information. It's when the second screen comes. So the bait for us is our content.
So in the 106 and Park app, we do give people an opportunity to tweet to the show from the app and to see the scrolling universe of everybody else who's watching the show and tweeting. And we see consistently every day a lot of people come into the app to use it, but there are a couple of things that really drive spikes in usage, and that is when we give people opportunities to become famous and to win stuff on the show. So one of our most compelling executions is that we pull up a national heat map on the show of all the app users who have the app open right then and there. And then the hosts will zoom into a city, and as they zoom in, individual dots start to appear, and those represent app users. Then they tap on one of those dots on live TV, and their name pops up, and then they get called right there on the show. And then the hosts have an interaction with them, and recently we've been giving away pairs of tickets to the Watch the Throne, the sold-out Jay-Z and Kanye West tour. So we'll blast users about it several hours beforehand, and we'll say you might have a chance to get on the show and win these tickets if you log into the app. And of course, on days like that, we see massive spikes. And then the other thing is constantly turning content in the app. So making sure that after the show is over, we get the video up right away, and we're flipping the content on the home screen like 3 times a day. We found that that's really key to get people to keep coming back and engaging with the app.
So you talked about smiles. Where's the future of social engagement going? So where, especially for, an Into Now, GetGlue, what's in it for the consumer more than the check-in, more than the smile? Looking into, 2012, what do you think will be there? Where do you think this will go? I check into Foursquare everywhere I go, but what's the future?
I guess from our perspective, we're about 1.5 million people in, and I would say that, from the start, that's actually not terribly successful in this world. I mean, you're talking about the largest medium, and you're actually talking about a pretty small segment that's getting engaged with you. We are obsessed with the device itself and what's happening in that device. I mean, for us, the one thing that I guess this panel hasn't talked about is these devices are absolutely astounding in terms of their capabilities. So for us, what we're taking advantage of is actually an input, which is a non-text input. We're taking audio. So you press a button, we listen to what you're watching, we immediately identify it and tell you what that is, tell you who else is watching it, and get people to engage. For us, what we're really excited about is this notion of context. What is the context of what I'm doing? I want my phone to be smart enough to understand that. So I think the entire industry, and people talk about check-ins, we talk about tags, the entire industry is looking at this and saying, okay, we went through a process of getting people excited about, expressing where they were, connecting with other people. Then we got to even a stage further where we're offering people some discovery, and we're saying, okay, you like this, other people like that. I think the next wave is going to be, what else do we understand from that context? I know you're in your living room. I know the type of show you're watching. What else can I surface to you that's going to be highly relevant? So I think what you'll see from us in the next sort of 12 months or even faster than that is these models of serendipity and content and other forms of context.
Well, we're pretty focused on check-ins, conversations, and rewards. And one of the challenges is we don't necessarily want to build out a complex product. I mean, I think that successful products got to be simple. So the fact that user is willing to tell you, I'm here, I'm watching, is a big deal. And our focus is on making that experience super polished and cool. One of the things that we've been iterating on, and we literally keep rolling out updates, will seem completely trivial to you, but we spend like agonizing months trying to perfect it, and it's getting the conversation right. And a lot of people are saying, well, there's like social TV, conversation is happening, it's everywhere, but where is it? Like, have you sort of tapped into one of these conversations and been able to extract a smile or like even parse what's happening? I mean, if you search by a hashtag on Twitter, there's a ton of noise. How do you turn noise into essence? So we've been spending a lot of time figuring that out, and we launched a product which is basically real-time, interesting conversations based on GetGlue check-ins and tweets combined. So now, as you check into a show, you actually see other fans in real time who are saying something interesting. And we think that that's incredibly cool, and that's what people want to see. They want to see other people talking about the same thing in real time, meaningful conversations. So we're continuing to focus on those bits.
I could jump in with, I think there's an interesting thing for marketers that's going to happen, is the question of who is going to own these conversations. And I think there are a lot of marketers who would love to tap into the engagement that people are having with television shows, especially as the screen is pulling you away oftentimes from commercials, because that's often when you see spikes in terms of people tweeting about a show or an event that they just saw, as well as, or they're just going to their computer and multitasking. So how can marketers start to take advantage of those moments? That might have to shift a little bit about how they approach advertising, as well as how they approach their deals for product placement, in ways in which that they can actually take and capitalize on those moments to truly engage people through what they're watching, through the context they're in right now, and tie that back to their brand to increase brand perceptions, as well as to go for a purchase intent as well. So I think there's a change happening there as well.
Just on that note, one of the challenges for us is if you're trying to integrate a brand into the social media conversation, making it feel genuine. So on our show, we actually drop a hashtag of the day every day at the top of the show. So it might be like, give me a break. And then we have people tweet in their witticisms to that, and we pick up a few of them on air. So we've sponsored a few of those, and we've talked about sponsoring a few of them. But it's a really thin line between social engagement and crossing over into commerce and making people feel like they're being taken advantage of. So you just have to be, for us, we're trying to strike that balance and figure out how we can integrate brands into the social conversation and still make it feel authentic and genuine enough that people aren't turned away from it.
So staying along the same lines of the advertising, What is a business opportunity for multi-screen advertising? And have you seen any brands be first movers in this space and take advantage of some of that shifting from screen to screen?
So I'll throw one out. So we did something with Pepsi that I thought was interesting and kind of one of the first of its kind, and I hope we see more of this, which was basically what we enabled was if you were watching the Pepsi commercial, you tagged it with Into Now, which is, validated the fact that you were watching this. We actually generated a coupon within your device that you could bring to a store and get a physical product. I think that notion of actually transferring from one medium to another is just absolutely mind-blowing, and I think consumers gravitate towards that really quickly. And the execution against those, I think, are going to get more and more compelling. So this idea that you can actually generate a physical product, a digital product, a media product within a device that goes from one screen into your pocket is, we're going to see a lot more of that.
I think Adam's example is actually a really powerful example of how to tie, because one of the behaviors that you're not seeing yet is that people are watching a commercial, and then going online and researching a product. That's a very small behavior within this simul-screen sort of activity. So when you're able to actually tie people to an advertisement and get something back from that tagging of the ad or that notification that you are checking in at that ad, there's a real value there. This can speak very highly to CPG brands, which are very, obviously offer-driven, and it can also speak highly to a lot of other brands who are looking to actually get trial and drive trial. It's a challenge, certainly, to do what we were talking about earlier, about maintaining that authenticity of the conversation when a brand steps in and tries to own it. But to also involve your product in that and make that authentic and make that expression authentic, that can be a very powerful model for marketers.
Yeah, I'm totally in Adam's camp on this. I think it's completely fascinating to be able to check in and then unlock physical coupons. Pepsi has also done some pretty cool stuff with Get Glue, where they're sponsoring X Factor rewards. And another example of the couponing, which is really cool. We've done a 6 weeks run with Gap, where you check into top TV shows and you unlock 40% off coupon at Gap's. I thought that was like really cool. Of course, my wife said, "Why not Bloomingdale's?" But that's another story.
I'm with your wife.
More and more, our sales are definitely coming cross-screen. I think that's part of the reason why you'll see, an advertiser come directly to a big media company so that they can plan a unique experience for us, for them, and that will touch all of our venues. So we'll find someone come in and want us to build a program that is like, hey, you have 100 million plus fans, people who've liked your different properties on Facebook, build us an app around that specific experience. Oh, and we want to be on CBS.com, and we want a music ID element, and there's some integration within the show, and more those bigger, broader cross-media packages, which maybe is a bigger topic than just the second screen, are how the buys are actually coming into the network.
Yeah, so on 106 and Park, there are actually a couple of new new in-show executions that are driven solely by the app. So one is that heat map example, which wouldn't exist if it weren't for the app. Another one is that we run barcodes in show, and we'll fly them out. They'll sit there for like 20 to 30 seconds, and if people scan them, they can win a prize or unlock secret video content of like the artist when they're backstage. So what we're doing now is we're going out and we're selling those. So it can be a giveaway for the sponsor's product to the person who gets the phone call on that map, and then the product can be integrated throughout that segment. Or when the barcode flies out, now what we're looking at doing is wrapping the sponsor branding around that on the screen. So I was actually kind of surprised that we were able to do this, because initially I thought, well, we'll just create some more inventory through this app, and then we'll be able to sell that. But we actually have created new broadcast executions, which are very, very valuable to us as a business.
So I'll throw one last topic out there, and then I want to open it up to the audience for some questions. But in terms of time shifting and live viewing, how is that impacting the industry, where we have more and more people that are watching TV shows on DVR or on mobile, especially when it comes into advertisers spending dollars on the TV?
I think actually all of us are helping drive live television in many ways. So the economics of television are obviously predicated heavily on live TV viewing, and that's why In fact, many of our partners are media companies because what we're doing is giving people a reason to participate live, right? There's a conversation that's happening that you want to be a part of. It could be a reward that you're unlocking or something else that you're happening. So all of us are sort of supporting that. I will say, though, the underlying data of what we see is up to 60% of stuff is still time shifted. I mean, and obviously that varies by genre. Sports aren't time shifted and news isn't time shifted, et cetera. But for sure, there is a pretty significant audience that's greater than half that's not watching it live.
I think we're seeing healthy numbers on the broadcast side, actually probably bigger than they have been in a long time when you get 28 million people tuning in to watch, the premiere of 2.5 Men. I mean, these are massive audiences. And
that was because of Charlie Sheen, though.
Ashton
Well,
Kutcher.
And Ashton, sorry.
I mean,
Ashton.
I guess that's the whole point. You get talent, you have a well-written show, you have something that goes on, that's the machine. And if you look across the board, it's not like that's an anomaly across the big shows. The big shows are all doing, 10+ million viewers. And, when you get that amount of people coming to a scheduled broadcast, then, fueling that discussion is certainly that our focus is, look, you want to keep it up there. And so digital certainly does what it can to make sure that brand awareness is up there, that there's always some type of mechanism driving people through. And if you have something like what happened with Charlie Sheen that happens, no comment about that. But the talent itself around those shows have been massive vehicles. And so actually we're seeing that broadcast is more popular than it's been in a long time. And so I think the exposure to people on digital platforms and building that audience clearly is helping drive awareness that you would think, there's nowhere else to go on the awareness front, but it is really the new vehicle for us reaching.
Just to echo what Adam was saying, what we're seeing in our data is that people are most excited to check in when they're watching live, and there's something magical about watching a premiere or your favorite show live. And that's what kind of makes people talk about it. If you're watching time shifted, you sort of feel guilty a little, like catching up, but you're not going to be participating in the conversation as much. So, not to say that we're enabling networks to kind of incentivize the live tune-in, but obviously there's a lot of time shifting going on. But from the perspective of conversation, most of it is happening live, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, actually, I want to thank everybody on this panel for helping us do our jobs better, because time shifting is something that makes advertisers and agencies quake in their boots, because God knows you're hitting the fast forward button and you're not watching the advertisements that are coming through. So the more that this social activity is being generated either by the networks or by applications, the more people do want to tune in live, and the more they will be exposed to the messages that marketers are putting out there. Of course, the next frontier is how do we, again, get involved in those conversations, add value to those simul-screened sort of activities. And that's really, I think, the next frontier, in addition to what everyone is doing to help out me in doing my job. So there you go.
It's all about Jason.
Everything is. It's winning.
Any questions in the audience?
I would love to hear Rob and Brandon address that issue of whether they really think that mobile media is actually sort of reactivating the live TV experience in a way that might actually help. If there's any evidence of this so far.
I mean, I think there's some basic stuff, without even pushing the boundaries of technology. You take like a lowest common denominator thing, like texting in to vote for something on air. I think Brandon made a really good point about the impact on the show. It's probably the upper echelons of where you've seen any kind of effort that has some type of digital push that can make its way into a thread into the show, whether it's something super simple on Big Brother where you're deciding what they eat that week, the usage just spikes through the roof. Or you can, in some cases people are still paying to make that kind of vote. On the flip side, you could give away $10,000 and we run 300-400 every season sweeps. $10,000 on a simple survivor vote when you just come in that doesn't impact the show. You get a chance to win by texting in and voting on something that's not impact, and the usage is way low. Someone could walk away with a trip and cash, but they'd rather actually be part of that viewing experience. And so I think we're anchoring more and more our efforts to, trying to weave in the digital part into what's actually being aired.
So we do believe that it's moving the dial. As I mentioned, we've got 10 to 15% of our audience actually in the app every day that the show is on air, and we do think that we're starting to deliver against the mandate to get create a compelling reason for people to sit down and tune into the live show. We're actually we're taking a lot of the learnings from the app now, and we're trying to apply them to other parts of our digital business. This real time, and it works great for a live show. That's one of the luxuries about 106 and Park is it's live. So we can make it a two-way dialogue. The app user and pretty soon the web user and the mobile web user become a part of the show, and they're able to interact with the show and get in the show and get stuff from the show. So we think that, right now we're seeing a lot of our audience migrating from feature phones to, those inexpensive Android phones, and that number is only going to get bigger and bigger in the next couple of years. So, just if it were mobile alone, I think you're going to see mobile moving the dial more as more people make that switch. But layer on top of that the fact that we're now bringing our learnings to other digital platforms. We're very excited about the future for the show.
They're very show specific right now. And I'm curious about that decision. Now, Bravo has taken a different tack. They've got the Bravo Live app, which applies across all of their programming. I'm curious, what's the thinking behind how you craft these apps, and is it really very audience specific and show specific, or is there room here for a network to sort of brand itself within an app that moves across multiple shows?
I think both plays are there. I think when you come down to a show-based level, clearly there are affinity groups that have built themselves around those shows. You know a lot about that demo. But there's also certain formats that just work well for these types of experiences. Clearly, one of the themes being discussed today is live. So we talked about time-slipped and buffered content, or time-shifted content. All of those elements. For a live event, whether it's a sporting event or the Grammys or something that appears on our air for us, where those types of events lead themselves to be more destination viewing events. And so by harnessing the power of those and starting to learn, we're certainly in a learning phase on what works and what doesn't from an interaction standpoint. But the likeliness that someone's coming and tuning on air for one of those is quite a bit more predictable. So we had a Grammys Live moment where we had a whole digital element that led up to one of our fans doing a performance with Justin Timberlake on the show. I mean, those things that take the kind of build up, that's a kind of interaction that maybe wouldn't play well on NCIS or a scripted drama. And so you really have to look at the genre, the format of the show to figure out where the interactions make sense and where they don't.
If it's a big show with a digitally savvy audience, there's an increasing likelihood that you're going to want to do a single purpose app, just so it stands out. It makes it easier for you to promote it. It makes it easier for people to discover it. But we will probably be pursuing a combination of the two, where for some of our shows where the audience is more consistent, maybe they're not as big as our biggest shows, we might do a TV network app that aggregates a bunch of them.
I keep coming back to this Big Brother example, but it's like a great sample of, we don't have many programs on our air where we're, have multiple cameras going for 3 months live capturing content. And it happens to be a fan base that has an insatiable appetite for every move that those people who are trapped in that house for 3 months, they want to know their every move. They'll sit there and stream live while they're all sleeping, and that's entertainment in some cases to folks, and you got to know that, okay, that's the dialogue, and you have assets in your arsenal that change program to program based on content and rights, and you figure out the right combination to deliver an experience back to that base.
I guess I would be playing on the other side of that. So my bet is it's a platform play, that over time consumers are going to grow very wary of the notion that they've got 1,000,001 different apps for every single show, and they have to remember to turn this app on for that and this app on for that. So my thought would be that we're going to end up much more in kind of a platform.
Some disagreement, finally. Good.
Hooray.
I disagree with that, but
Good.
I definitely see where you're coming from.
I'm not going to watch TRL.
I mean, I think platform.
It's called
I
106
think
in Park.
platforms work for scalability, and everybody wants to get there. You know, I think everyone wants to have some baseline, but you also don't want to be lowest common denominator. And not saying that that's what all platforms do. Some are very rich experience, but for instance, even basic things like check-in, at some point that becomes table stakes, and then you say, okay, what's the notion of other communities? What other elements do we want to incentivize and reward? And oh, by the way, now someone's checking in and they're liking us on one of our show pages, and people like Alex are extremely smart. He's going to figure out 20 other behaviors that we want to enforce, and his platform's going to support that over time. And it'll tailor well to some services or not, but you know, at some point you want to be in the learning phase where you're testing out with those audience what's working and what's not. And then those things tend to be what migrates down into the core platforms. And so for efficiency and being able to run a proper business,
Yeah, 100%
you end up
on this.
adopting that.
Totally agree with you on this. And we launched, in September, we launched business.getglue.com, and we have over 60 major networks already using this. It's a very V1 of the platform, but the basic idea is you manage your presence on the service. You can upload specials, and you can basically reward your fans. But on the other side of the spectrum, the app that Brandon built will never have that. There is no way. It's just amazing, so creative and so tailored to their audience. I don't think we'll ever be in a position to sort of templatize this. So I feel like there's kind of an opportunity for both to coexist, which is, and I think to your point, basically like the common bits should migrate into the platform, and then you still have a lot of creativity innovating around, your own shows because you know your content best.
Okay, we have a question in the audience too.
Hi, I'm Tim from MediaVest, and just had a question about you guys have been talking about the water cooler effect and building communities. So, how do you guys view Facebook and Twitter? Whether integrating with them or creating separate communities, and then how do you view each differently in terms of like user consumption and second screen behavior?
I mean, I can start from our perspective. So for us, Facebook is a platform. They, pretty much are the de facto right now for what we would call the social graph, and we don't need to repeat that actually because what we're focused on is an interest graph. So the notion for us is the fact that you and I are both watching the same show is enough for me to engage with you in that moment in time. I don't necessarily want to be your friend forever. I don't want to be your friend in another situation, but for that transient moment, that's great. So we don't need to own the social graph. What we need is to use that social graph to overlay an interest on top of that. Twitter is just a completely different model. I mean, that's just a form of self-expression where we're using it as more of a tool set to allow you to broadcast out your opinions or other things like that. So I do view those as platforms that we're leveraging, not competitive in any way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that these are big social platforms, and our angle is that we are vertical focused on TV and entertainment, and we can do a better job around entertainment specific things. But even today, a lot of the social chatter around TV on Twitter and on Facebook is already coming from Get Glue fans. So even though we're somewhat small, we're not that small. So for certain shows, you can see up to like 30% of tweets are coming from Get Glue and saying that people are watching. But in general, I totally agree that there's no reason to reinvent social graph. It already exists. We should just have a single login button, simplify our life, and then focus on other things.
And I think there's something interesting though that none of us have been talking about because we're talking about simul-screen behavior. But I wouldn't count out the cable boxes just yet, or the ITV chips in televisions just yet, especially when it comes to Facebook and Twitter. Because again, no one up here is going to try to replicate Facebook. No one up here is going to try to replicate Twitter. They're going to try to leverage it. this could be a huge sea change if people start to actually engage through their television set, if Google decides to take their Motorola acquisition and convert their boxes to actually be able to engage with those platforms, you could see a huge sea change in terms of how this behavior plays out. So it's still kind of a question of how it's going to play out, but I think with Facebook and Twitter, that's more of the play in the long run.
I'm going to be a contrarian and say
Please
I disagree.
I disagree too.
Yeah, no, the device is what makes this world, right? So if you step back and actually look at what's happening on that big screen, what's happening is more and more television, and frankly, it is the social center of your living room experience, and the last thing that you want to do is have something that interrupts that experience. And actually, that device is why a lot of us exist. I mean, I think there's a reason why we're talking at a mobile panel, and a lot of it has to do with the behavior of a one-to-one experience on a device. So I actually think the TV gets dumber and everything else gets smarter around it.
Couldn't agree more. So
Maybe Apple busts us and they come up with an Apple TV that you touch,
There's
but
that
I'm not sure
rumor.
that that's a TV. If you're touching it, it's not a TV.
Giant iPad,
It's just a big iPad.
like the ones they have in the display window.
It's telepathy.
Great.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, panel.
Thank you.